Hello, everyone. My name is Padmini Nidumolu, and I'm the co-founder of Lean and Agile for Women. And we have 4 pillars in Lean and Agile, as most of you probably know. The spirals, the Lean Agile 100, the LIA Next Gen, bringing in the next generation of women into the growth mindset, and conference and organizational partnerships. And this video is part of Lean and Agile 100, also known as LIA100. And this is an initiative we started to celebrate the journeys of 100 inspiring, influential, and great women thought leaders in Lean and Agile spaces. In this session, I'm very excited to introduce you all to a mentor, a writer, a national speaker on the topics of Lean and Agile. And those who work with her closely believe she's a passionate storyteller and an inspirational leader. She's currently working in Deloitte as a practice lead in enterprise transformation and alignment. And she's also the founder of their Lean startup at Scale, Center of Excellence. She's a technologist and recognized thought leader within the Agile community. Her significant contributions are especially towards increasing diversity and gender parity. As part of a community involvement, she chaired various forums and conference tracks for Agile Alliance, I believe for more than 3 years. She loves to hike, bike, and run, so she's very fit. And we both have a passion for cooking in common. She authored her first book, Becoming an Agile Leader, and she's the author of the upcoming book, Leading Lean, Ensuring Success and Developing a Framework for Leadership. And she also has a white paper coming up on the Deloitte platform called Lean Flow to Enterprise Agility. So she'll have a very busy November with the book and white paper releasing, coming up. And she's also most probably talking in Lean Startup Conference in November. And, that's something to look forward to as well. Please join me in welcoming Jena Dahl. Hey, Jena, how are you?
Honey, hi, good. How are you?
Good, good. And thanks for joining LIA100. It's such an honor to host you here.
Oh, it's such a great cause. I think you ladies are doing such a wonderful thing for the community. And thank you so much for asking me to participate. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And thanks for joining. All right. So without further ado, we really want to learn a lot from you today. So I'm going to start straight away with, the most important question here. What is your view of Lean, and especially around what do Agile practitioners not know about Lean?
That's an excellent question and great to lead off, because I think it sets the tone for the whole conversation that we'll have today. Lean is a mindset, and Lean came before Agile. And a lot of times when I say that, people look at me like, it did? It's like a very little known fact. And so Lean actually was from Toyota, from the Toyota manufacturing system that started actually in the 50s after the Toyota delegates that came over here to the United States decided that the General Motors processes just weren't going to work for their culture. And they needed something that was better and that was more of a fit for what they wanted to do and what their vision was. And so it all sprung out of the Japanese, of course, and I won't go into an incredible history, but I think what Agilists need to understand is that Lean is more of a mindset, and it's more about, it's not just about work and process and eliminating waste and doing all of those things that Lean talks about as far as quality and so forth. It's about leadership. It's about the 2 pillars, the respect for people and continuous improvement. And it's about perfection. It's about striving for perfection in everything you do. One of the tie-ins with my book is the fact that, you have to be a fully formed leader. You have to consciously develop those leadership skills, and you have to recognize where your weak points are and where your strong points are, and then balance the 2. Agile is more, even though Agile is also a mindset, because that was the original thought around it, it has actually been taken and talked more about from a method perspective. When I say Agile to my clients, and when they say they want to go Agile, which is usually how they phrase it, we want to go Agile. And I come back and I say, I think what you want to do is you want to become Agile. And they look at me and they're like,
yeah.
How does that work? Because I want to do Scrum is what it is. And that's not Agile. I mean, it's a part of Agile. It's a method. And it's a method that follows the Agile mindset and the Agile principles in the manifesto, but they're missing the point.
Yeah.
Because both Lean and Agile is all about satisfying the customer, having delighted customers, and understanding the mindset and the customer centricity that it takes. I think Agilists have lost that to a certain extent. I think the Lean community is more focused on that. And I think that's what the Agile community needs to look at a little bit stronger and focus a little bit more on the customer to understand that that's really what Lean is all about.
That's awesome. And you bring up a great point there, Jean. I think the customer centricity is it, and that should be the true North Star. So that leads to my next question. And we all know this is an age of constant change and constant chaos. It's the VUCA world. And, the leaders sometimes are lost. They want to do the right thing. They're intentional about the right thing. But in your mind, what are the foundational criteria that leaders must have or will need in this age and in this VUCA world?
I would say there are really 5 major things that a leader who wants to lead in today's age needs to have. First of all, you need to understand how to lead yourself. Every servant leader is a great leader. The people that really want to serve and come from that perspective are usually the best leaders. And if you look throughout history, those leaders are the ones that we say, those are great leaders because they give freely. Yeah. Then you also have to understand how to lead others. You have to also then take it to the next level and understand how to motivate people and how to empathize and how to understand what drives them to actually get the best out of them. And then, of course, you have to understand leading your customer, too. You have to basically understand the building blocks of what makes good customer centricity, understanding value, building and generating value for your customers. And if you're not, you have to be able to look at yourself and your company and say, where are we falling down, and then quickly correct it. And then also you have to understand how to lead your enterprise. You have to be strategic, you have to be tactical, you have to be operational. And then the last one is you have to be able to be disruptive. You have to be disruptive in your culture, you have to be disruptive in your thinking, you have to be innovative, and you have to be able to risk. Because there's nothing constant but change itself, and every day brings a new opportunity. Absolutely. And risk should basically be looked at as an opportunity, another opportunity to figure something new out or approach it from a different perspective. So change is good. Leaders today need to understand that change brings opportunity. It's not a threat. And I think that's the biggest mindset shift that leaders today have to make. You have to embrace and not run away from it.
Yeah. And then how is this different, or in what areas is it different from the previous generation leaders?
That's a really good question. I've spent a lot of time thinking about that as I've been writing my book. And if you think about what was important in 21st century or 20th century leadership, it really wasn't until the 80s or the 90s, the last part of that century, that people started to move away from tayloristic management and the scientific management pieces. In the 21st century, you're going to have much more of a servant leadership mindset. You're going to have to understand that everybody doesn't come from the same place that you do. Diversity in the workplace, not only female and male, but also ethnically and sexual orientation and all of those things that make us unique have to be identified, cherished, and brought into the work area. People are holistic individuals, and they need a balance in their life. And so bringing other people's viewpoints and backgrounds and relationship status and religions all make it an interesting melting pot.
Right. That's
where true innovation comes from. And I think that's definitely something that our 21st century leaders are going to have to understand and grasp and embrace.
Awesome. So I'm going to kind of, tread a little bit into the waters where, you've seen many years and, several decades, in fact, of transformations, both on the lean and agile spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Over the past 5 or 10 years, even, what are some of the glaring changes or waves that you have observed in your experience?
So I think the biggest change is that my clients usually come to me because they have tried Agile and they've done it a couple of times. They've tried to launch a transformation and they're only getting either marginal results or it's failed. And that's because of the way we look at it in a very one-dimensional way. Agile is not just about scaling teams. Yeah. It's about, first of all, scaling all the way up from the teams to the products, to the enterprise, and through to the portfolio. And so what happens is they look at it from a very one-dimensional perspective. Let's just scale those teams. And then all of a sudden, the executives are sitting around saying, well, we really didn't get the bang for the buck on that. Why is that? Well, it's because they're not thinking about it from a multidimensional perspective, because you also have the horizontal aspects of the flow of work and the behavioral change that has to happen. Because if you don't address your cultural perspective, those things that make your company unique and how you're going to actively and participate in changing that culture to match the agility mindset, which is a combination to me of lean and agile to respond to change, you are not going to succeed. And so I always tell my clients that this is a three-dimensional effort, and if you're not going to want to hit on all three of those cylinders, we can get you to a place where you'll be relatively successful, but you'll never get over that hump until you realize it's more than just scaling teams. It's horizontal, vertical, and behavioral change that you're going to need. All three have to be being worked on to make sure that you end up being successful.
Right. And some of your clients probably were successful, in really getting all.
Yes, I'll be honest. They're not all great, white papers and case studies, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's the reality of our lives. But hypothetically, if an organization did come to achieve those three areas that you just mentioned, so it's really being agile, not doing agile, but just being agile culturally and in all dimensions. What are some of the values or elements that will be visible when agile transformation truly happens? What are some of those values? It could be transformation done, or they're on a momentum for continuous improvement. What tells you that they've got it?
I look at what their customers say about them. Are they satisfied? What is the net promoter score? What is the customer lifetime value? What is their churn rate? Those are all statistics that tell me whether or not, you can, and a lot of executives do, they come in and say, we've got it, we understand this. But then when I dig a little deeper and ask them, what's your net promoter score? And then it's not just about net promoter score, because it's also about your churn rate, your customer lifetime value, and metrics. Get it, analytics, get it specific, get it quantitative. And then let's take a look at that, because that's where really the rubber meets the road. And if you can't quantify it, if you can't show me in numbers, I'm somewhat of a skeptic. I'm not always all optimistic. I want you to tell me where you're at right now, because that's how we're going to tell whether or not we're making progress. Because if you have a net promoter score of -10, and over the next 6 months as I work with you, your net promoter score drops or doesn't change much, then we're probably not doing the right things, or the right things right, however that little saying goes. But you have to make sure that you understand what to measure, and it has to be important. So I think the customer centricity piece is important. The other thing is leadership alignment. Are you aligned up and down your organization, and do you understand how that alignment happens? And that's what I call building a centralized decision-making framework. If you can show me your strategic plan, that's another checkbox that I always look for. And then culture. It's going out and talking to your people and understanding that it's it's not only about the customer, but it's also about your employees.
Yeah.
Because if leaders don't understand what their employees are thinking and how they're interacting with their customers, you're missing a big part of it.
Yeah.
So really, it's a trifecta. A lot of things come in threes, and I would say those are the top three.
Those are the big three. So, yeah, that's great. And you have probably done, several transformations, and you've been with the organizations through their journeys over the past several decades. If you can think about the biggest changes or the most significant changes in organizations and workforces over the past couple of decades, what are those changes that you've seen as a trend, or something that's just evolved?
So I think it's the workforce itself. Like I said or alluded to earlier, it's very diverse.
Yeah.
What motivates the millennial does not motivate the baby boomer. And you have to understand those generational differences as a manager and a leader. I'm actually working with one organization, and the transformation is being sponsored by the Chief Human Resource Officer. And I'm seeing more and more of that, where I'm starting to work more. Of course, I'm focusing with the lean aspects of my career more on the business than I am on IT over the last 10 years. But now what I'm focusing on too is what Eric Ries would call those deep systems things, those support systems that need to be present in an organization to support a lean and agile organization and to foster continuous learning and continuous improvement. Because if you don't have that ecosystem in place, and that's why I call my lean flow method an ecosystem, is because it spans the whole organization. It's a holistic approach. And that's really what you need. That's how transformation has changed. That's how the workforce has changed, because if you're dealing with, I think it is now 4 generations that are in the workforce, the rules have changed. And this particular client that I was talking about, what they're concerned about is succession planning. It's not about money. It's not about productivity. It's about, do we have the processes documented that we could actually turn over to a younger generation to successfully continue to run and operate our business? And that is why I think lean has come into the picture, is because executives are starting to realize that you have to have both lean and agile in place. It's not one or the other. You cannot do them in silos. You have to do them together. And it takes a workforce that's dedicated, that understands continuous improvement and continuous learning, and that's devoted to servant leadership and these things to actually make all of this work. So transformation has gotten a lot more complicated in the last 5 to 10 years, because there are a lot more moving parts, because the workforce has gotten a lot more complicated.
Yeah. So what alleviates those complications, or what skills and abilities should the resources or the leadership or the organizations have to, I wouldn't say completely dissipate the complexity, but at least to maneuver through the complexity effectively?
The one thing I hear most from the executives that I work with is, and I had one of them, a CEO, tell me, I need radical transparency in my organization. I need visibility into what's going on. And I want that visibility for everybody in the organization. I think transparency, visibility, accountability, respect for people, all of those things, both lean and agile, all of the principles and the things that make up the mindset and all are just so primed and ready to be pushed into the workforce and into the business world, because it makes sense. It's all of the things that are going to help you come together and understand how to move that organization forward. I think it's really just as simple as that. I mean, we are overcomplicating it a lot. I always ask my customers, what are the business outcomes you're looking for? And then we work backwards from there. So, and every one of them is different. I mean, transformation is an art, it's not a science, unfortunately. If it was more of a science, it would be easier to teach. But it's not, and so it's an art form, and it takes practice, and it takes mentoring, it takes coaching. That's why I think what you're doing is so important to the community, because there are so many aspects of this that we need to get better at to help the business world to be successful.
Yeah. And I really wanted to touch, this aspect in our interview today, which is you worked with so many teams and so many organizations. And with Lean and Agile, we are very passionate about learning what the gender balance looks like and what is the impact of lack thereof, right? And I've spoken to many people, and some people brush it off, saying, it's not all about women. Don't call it out. You don't have to call it out. Whereas some women feel very strongly about, that's the reality and it's in our face. Let's talk about it. What is your viewpoint about gender imbalance, if you believe it exists, and how does it impact?
Well, it does. I think it really does, because going back to what I said a little earlier about the diversity and the strength of a very diverse team actually brings innovation and creativity into it. But I will have to say, and a shameless plug here for Deloitte, that Deloitte, one of the reasons why I joined Deloitte, and some of my colleagues and friends, when I actually came aboard on a very large organization like this, said, "Oh, well, you're defecting, and that's corporate America." And the way I looked at it was, I'm joining an organization that actually has a 54 to 46% female to male parity.
Wow.
And
awesome.
That's what I was looking for, is some place that was going to embrace that diversity and understand the power of women and men working together. And you're right, it's not all about women, because it takes both. And I actually have just as many men on my teams as I do women. And I treat them equally, and the ones that excel are the ones that are worth my time. And because as a servant leader, you've got to put that into motion. I can't do that for you. You have to own your development. And if you do, then you are, that is something that we can work on, and that is something that we can take away from the work area and figure out how to develop you in different areas and move both. I basically mentor mostly women, but I wouldn't mind mentoring a few men. I'll mentor them too, but it's usually women who ask me to mentor them. And I thoroughly enjoy the relationship to develop and cultivate all women of all ages. It's not just young women. I have somebody right now that's in their later part of their career that's still interested in making a big bang. And so it's not just about the younger women. It's across the spectrum as far as age.
Yeah. And as you said, in the mentoring experience, and I'm just assuming that a lot of, them probably mentioned to you about, the internal dialogues, or, how they're apprehensive, why they're apprehensive. And many of them are afraid to take that first step towards anything, their next step. What would be your advice, or what is that message you might have for women who are apprehensive to take that first step towards their dream? It could be anything.
Yeah, it could be. It was funny because I was just talking to a young lady that I'm mentoring, and she kept saying, "I'm sorry." And I told her, I said, "Why are you sorry? Why are you apologizing?" And she goes, "I'm sorry. I don't know why." And that was like, as women, we have, we're enablers, we're appeasers. We have all of these qualities that are wonderful, that make us all unique in different ways. But we don't actually look at, thinking about, we don't spend as much time as men do thinking about what does success look like. And when I have somebody that I take on new as a mentor, a mentee-mentor relationship, I actually asked them, I said, "What are you expecting to get out of this? What is the end game for you? What is the business outcome again? What is the outcome?" And then we structure the mentoring program around that. And if it's to become a better leader, or to become a better communicator, or to build business, since I've got several women and I'm helping to do that too, you have to understand what you're after, because then you get focused.
Right.
And focus is what's important. And I think that's the one thing that I have had an abundance of, is focus, which has always driven me to the next thing. I mean, you've just named off 3 different things I'm doing, and most people would only be able to maybe accomplish one over the 6 or 8 months I'm doing all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But now I will, in full disclosure, I do not have children, so they do take up a wonderful amount of your time. But I think, focus, understanding what you really want to become, and then working really hard at it. Nothing is going to be handed to you. nothing is handed to men either. They do have somewhat of a leg up because they're better at networking, they're better at teamwork, usually in general, but women have great skill sets too, multitasking, under empathy, understanding when to open your mouth and when not to. Those types of things come more natural to women. So figure out what your strong suits are, figure out your weaknesses to be developed, and then go find someone to help you, because you cannot do it alone. Everything takes a village. So that's why I love your program, or what you're doing here is awesome, because this is an important piece of tribal knowledge for the community that hopefully will come out through the ladies and interviews that you conduct.
Absolutely, that's brilliant. And you mentioned about focus, Jean, that you have that in abundance. You know, I'm just curious. You travel, you're writing a book, you speak at conferences, and you do a million other things, I'm sure. How do you keep all these together and so well? Apart from focus, what else makes this possible?
Well, I don't sleep. It's only kind of half kidding. But, you know, I use my time very wisely, I think. My father was very instrumental in my life. Actually, a man was very instrumental very early on in my career. He always said, Jeannie, you can do whatever you put your mind to. And I think we all can. We can do whatever we devote all of our time and all of our attention to. So I put my head down. I don't think about flying from the East Coast to the West Coast 2 or 3 times a month. When I'm sitting on a plane, I make good use of my time. Time management is a very strong skill that you need to have. And you need to understand what those goals are. Like I said, you need to get focused on what's important to you and then put your energy towards it. And whatever time you have, even if it's 15 minutes or a half an hour or whatever, use it wisely every day. And it'll build. Your successes, your focus, the results will happen. You just have to devote some energy and some time to it.
Oh, that's, I'm actually going to make a note of that. You know, I really need that in my own life right now. And you're a wealth of information, Jean, and you have seen organizations and clients and people in close quarters, and you know, you just have so much learning that you pulled along the way.
Thank you.
Would you be able to recommend any learning resources to our viewers? It could be books, podcasts, authors, speakers, conferences, anything really that, you know, what stands out in your learning journey?
So the Agile Alliance conference is coming up. I've been a very active participant in that over the last probably 6 or 7 years. If you're an Agilist and you want to learn more, I would go to their conference. I think it's going to be in Washington this year,
it's
early
in our town this
August.
time. Yeah.
Yep. The Lean Startup, of course, come see me speak. Hopefully I'll be on the stage. We're still working through the details, but that's early to mid-November in San Francisco. And then it just depends on whether you want to find more out about Lean or if you're working more towards understanding Agile. Because there are a lot of great conferences out there. There's the Service Design Conference that's coming up. There's the Lean Summit that I think just happened. And then also there's always South by Southwest that happens every year, and that's a really great place. I haven't been able to go the last couple of years, but going there is so energizing with all of the young people and the innovators and the great topics and the speakers and all of that. So, that's usually in March every year, so that just happened. So I would strongly suggest at least once in your life going to South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. It's an awesome experience.
Cool. And I bet your upcoming book will be a great book for us to recommend to somebody else, you know, in any of the interviews that we're going to have. So that is great.
I hope so.
Yeah.
So, but I sure do appreciate the time to speak and all of your efforts in the community.
Yeah. And, you know, as we are wrapping up here, is there a message or is there a quote that you would like to, or anything that you would like to give as a parting thought to the viewers here?
I have a little credo that I go by in my life. It's, let me see if I can make sure I say this right. Always look to the future, learn from the past, but always live in the present.
Wow.
Because a lot of times what we do is we get ahead of ourselves and then we forget about the present because we're so forward thinking, or we're stuck in the past or whatever. Every day is a gift, and every day that you're 6 feet above ground, as my dad used to say, is a good day. So make the best of it. I know it sounds kind of corny, but we go through so much of our lives with just blinders on, and let's just do the same routine every day. Get up, brush our teeth, put our pants on, go to work, come home, feed the kids, go to sleep, and do the same thing over and over again. Tomorrow, try something different. Alternate your routines or your habits and see what happens. So I bet you'll be really surprised, because once you get out of that rut and you start looking around, that actually is the biggest ingenuitive starter that I've ever seen. So try something new tomorrow.
I'm gonna
Live in the
definitely
present.
try. I have like a million new things probably, but I'll pick one.
Okay. There you go. Just pick one. That's right. Don't get overcommitted.
Yes.
That's easy to
Awesome.
do.
Yes. And all the very best for your upcoming book, Jean. We'll look forward to, laying our hands on one of the copies soon. It's November 4th, if I'm not wrong. And it'll be available on Amazon, I'm assuming.
It is. It's up there right now. You can pre-order, and I will, when it comes out in hard copy in early November, I think it will be, right before the Lean Startup Conference, I will send you a copy signed, and both of you, I'll send you both a copy.
Yeah, I can't wait to get that.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Jean. This was a pleasure speaking with you, and we hope to have you involved in this community and come back and talk and, provide your coaching and mentoring to this community as you've always done. Thank you so much for being part of LIA100.